Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Nitin Vishwas, who is the co-founder of Ronin Wines, which is India's and Asia's first meadery, and they are bringing back meads, the world's oldest alcoholic beverage made from honey. Hi Nitin, welcome to ELI.
Hi, Priya Arjun. Thank you so much for inviting me for this.
I would request you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Okay, so my name is Nitin Vishwas. I'm the co-founder of a brand called Moonshine. We are India's and Asia's first mead brand. We ferment honey to make alcohol. And this alcohol, otherwise known as mead, is the oldest alcohol human civilization has ever seen.
Hmm. Okay.
I have a degree in mechanical engineering from the National Institute of Engineering, and I also have an MBA from the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad.
Okay.
And after close to 14 years of being in corporate, I took the entrepreneurial plunge and
Okay.
started this with a old friend.
Okay. So before we start talking about the venture you are building, can you tell us a little bit about your early career and how this sort of helped you to join the path of entrepreneurship? What triggered you, or what was your initial experience that made you think that entrepreneurship is something that I can do?
Very honestly, never thought I would ever get into entrepreneurship. That's the honest answer. So post engineering, I spent a couple of years, a little over a couple of years with L&T,
Mhm.
Powai, as an engineer looking after value engineering, and then post a couple of years with them, and I did a short stint in management consulting before I uh, went on to doing my MBA at the Indian School of Business.
Mm.
Post ISB, again spent a short stint with an infrastructure company before I joined McKinsey,
Mhm.
and I was a consultant with McKinsey for 4 years. And during this time, sort of got a chance to dabble with multiple sectors, multiple companies, multiple roles,
Mm.
and truly, honestly, the most sort of all-rounded experience I could ask for.
Okay.
And it was post McKinsey is, I think during McKinsey is when I first read about meads on an in-flight magazine.
Mm.
And once I sort of read it, I found it interesting, sent a bunch of pictures of the article to a very old friend, somebody I know for over 35 years now,
Mm.
saying, there is this new category of alcohol. History meets mystery. Why don't we try and make this just for fun? Again, there was never a chance plan to turn this into business. And it was during around this time that I also moved out of consulting and took on a role with a healthcare company, Abbott.
Mm.
And it was this newfound ground, a more I wasn't traveling as much, and that gave me a lot more time to sort of work on this idea with my co-founder. And it
Mhm.
reached that point where we started to see friends come back, talk to us about the product, and that little epiphany sort of a moment where we realized that this thing might just have a business plan surrounding it. And
Okay.
that was around the time when we started talking to excise,
Mm.
realized there was no law, so put in applications to get a new law created.
Okay.
Maharashtra being a very progressive state when it comes to wines and beers in particular,
Mm.
wines in particular actually, was more than welcome. It took us a while, but they were very, very progressive in the way they thought and created a new category for fermentation of honey,
Okay.
and classified it as a wine. And that's pretty much how the entire journey started. So for us, it was we started as a hobby, and it slowly transitioned into a business idea, and we've managed to sort of build it now for over the last, I think, build it for over 4 years now. We are
Okay.
in our fifth year.
Okay. So business side is fine. One thing I'm curious to understand: how did you build the product? As in, how did you get the know-how to ferment and create a, let's say, the distillery or whatever the equipment is
Meadery,
required?
meadery.
Okay.
So distillery would be where you distill. Meadery is where you ferment honey. uh, very different processes. For us, it was, to be honest, we started to, online is, the best sort of friend in such situations. So
Hmm.
we used a lot of platforms, a lot of forums that you find online to talk about the product and get inputs on how do you make it, how do you perfect it. We reached that stage where some of our basic trials had reached a point where it had some sort of traction with at least our friends and family. But we very soon realized that, from a quality standpoint, if you what you see outside being made by professional mead makers
Hmm.
was way above the sort of on the quality mark as compared to what we were making, and there was this gap that needed to be filled. Now, the early parts of our life when we were dabbling with meat was using books. We started to import books because these books weren't available in India. But it was over the course of, I think, a year and a half's experimentation, we realized there may be a need for one of us to sort of go and intern with a couple of meaderies, either in Europe or in Asia or in America.
Hmm.
And we wrote to a bunch of American meaderies, and we literally wrote a line: "Free Indian labor before for your Christmas
Okay.
requirements. Would you be willing to speak to us and help us?" So two meaderies wrote back, and Rohan was on a flight to US, stayed in the US, couch surfed his way, worked with a couple of meaderies there, did everything from cleaning to making a batch. And
Hmm.
I think over the course of the next 4 5 months, 4 5 weeks that he was there, a lot of little gaps that were there in our mead making process sort of started to come together. And all these experiences sort of led us to the final product. And obviously, a lot of product testing happened in India because meads, this fermented honey based beverage, in abroad is all high alcohol. Still, they package it like wine and they sell it like wine. But
Hmm.
we realized very quickly in India, because of our taste palettes and the weather that we live in, we needed to do a lot of things differently to cater to the audience here. So, reducing the alcohol percentage, going really strong on the flavor profile where fruits dominated
Okay.
the sort of flavoring that we used, and more importantly, the carbonation as a key component to the product, where decisions that were taken through a lot of taste trials that we've done. We've done, I think, over 200 taste trials during the course of sort of finalizing on what product would work in India.
So this was a long process of building the product. Uh,
Yes.
Once the product was ready, what were the next steps? How did you create a market? Because the way I understand, people are not aware of such a drink, and if they are aware of, they probably don't have access to, there is no distribution channel, there is no awareness also in the market. Even the wine distributors, wine vendors wouldn't know about such a product. How did you crack the market, or are you
In fact,
cracking it right now?
we're still trying to crack it. But more
Okay.
importantly, I think we realize the problem, right? Nobody has made meads in India in over 1,000 years.
Mm.
Although it is more local to our geography than, or any civilization has actually seen meads. It's OG alcohol. Wines and beers followed meads, and then distillation started after.
Mm.
So that was the problem statement. How do you sort of crack that? So I think as an alcobev company, we don't have much of a choice when it comes to doing above the line marketing. We can't do hoardings, we can't do online ads, we can't do offline ads, we can't do print ads. So the only sort of way to get the product accepted is to what a lot of alcohol companies called LOL, right? Liquid on lips, wet sampling is the only way forward. And so what we used to do was we would actively participate in little festivals that used to happen, events that would happen, which were centered around beer or wine, and very elaborately keep the sampling process uh, active in restaurants. So very alcohol is a lot simpler. It's got its constraints, but therefore, because there are so many constraints, there are just 2 3 things you got to do. The only thing is you got to do it well.
Mm.
And the one main thing of those 2 3 things is sampling. The more
Okay.
you sample the product, the better the response.
Mm.
You have to obviously juxtapose good sampling with a great liquid and great availability. Uh, So the great liquid got ticked off, I think, quite early, but the problem came with availability because a lot of retailers were very scared to keep something that they've never heard of.
Mm.
We were lucky to find a bunch of really decent distributors who were more than happy to uh, sort of help us with our journey. Uh,
Okay.
but I think the trick was about convincing the retailers to keep our product, and uh, that led to some delays in availability in a lot of small pockets around the city. But I
Mm-hmm.
think what worked in our case was massive. We decided not to spread ourselves too thin.
Mm.
So we said, you know what, let's pick up 3 micro markets and let's
Okay.
do everything in those 3 micro markets. So we do it in a place like, let's say, when we pick Bombay, we pick Bandra, we pick Lokhandwala, Andheri West, and we pick Powai. We
Mm.
said we won't go out of this little triangle,
Okay.
and everything was done in this triangle so that our limited resources were better utilized. But
Mm.
what this did was this amplified the noise around the brand. Every tasting event happened here,
Mm.
and retailers who were otherwise averse to it started to have customers come to them before and ask for the product. And when that happens, you start building that little trust. Because I
Mm.
think the most important thing in is when you're building a consumer brand is building trust with your channel,
Mm.
that this product won't get stuck, you won't lose
Okay.
money.
Okay.
And by just focusing our attention on a small micro market, we
Mm.
amplified noise enough for retailers outside this little micro market also to start asking us for the product. And
Mm.
when they ask for it versus you push them to keep it, the your resistance to getting movement is a lot lower, and that helps the brand sort of grow. So that's been one of the fundamental tenets. But obviously all this only works when your liquid is good. And we noticed almost a 4-in-1 conversion when
Okay.
somebody would try the product, which we understand is a pretty good number or a good percentage to have. And that's how the brand has slowly and steadily grown. Obviously our Instagram is very active, our Facebook is very active. We are all the time talking to our consumers.
Mm.
We personally manage the account. We don't have an agency between us, so we know what the consumer is asking, and loops get closed very quickly. And
Okay.
all this aids to the customer experience with the brand
Mm.
and helps sort of generate better recall.
Okay. Uh, Curious to know about the finances. How I think it was a long journey from ideating to building the product, then to taking it to market and reaching a point where you'll break even. So till that time, somebody needs to incur the expenses. How did you,
Yes.
build the runway for
So
that?
for that we have taken finances. We've done a few rounds, but all angel rounds, where we've got friends and family. A lot of the folks who came in on our journey were people with whom we have worked with. Those who, because usually at our stage, it's never somebody investing in the product; they're investing in the entrepreneur.
Hmm.
And therefore a lot of the almost every one of our earlier our current existing angels are people who have known us, who have seen us work with them in the past, or have known us as friends, who just believed what we were trying to build had a story, and more importantly they liked what they were tasting. Liquid is also nice, so that matters. I think that's so we've raised some amount of capital through friends, family, and some HNIs.
Hmm.
But we will be now in we are in the process of sort of working on raising a more serious investment round. But when you are the first license in the country, you don't have the benefit of contract manufacturing to test the product. So what we did was we were very slow in the way we invested the money.
Hmm.
We had to invest in our own space. We had to buy our own equipment. Capex expenses were all our own, and therefore when we set up the space, we went with a concept that is not something that is encouraged very well. But now I think in this downturn, it becomes an important criteria is minimal viable product, right?
Hmm.
We didn't go and set up 10 tanks, fully automated, state of the art bottling machine, state of the art labeling machine, state of the art filtration system on day zero. We literally added 2 tanks. We designed our own bottling machine for 1,20,000. We hand insulated our tanks and saved about 60 grams on it. So we've gone completely old school jugaad.
Hmm.
The whole idea was, how do you get the product out and where is it that you come to a point where investing the next amount of capital won't mean capital getting locked up, but actually capital being used to generate revenue? Because
Okay.
last thing we wanted was 5 tanks, of which only 2 tanks are being used. The plant efficiency was critical, capacity utilization was critical, and so we've gone step by step from 2 tanks to 3 tanks to 4 tanks to 5 tanks to now 9 tanks,
Mm,
from 1,000 liter tanks to 2,000 to 3,000 and finally 20,000. All this has been a journey, and in the middle we had 2 COVIDs.
mm,
So we're not an industry that is given the opportunity to sell stuff online. We are a very, very old school brick and mortar industry, and so we don't have the advantage of just going onto Amazon and selling alcohol.
mm,
So therefore we were conscious that any decision taken in terms of investments needs to be thought out. Any scheme put in the market needs to be thought well, and path to profitability literally has driven all our decisions in terms of pricing and marketing. And that has led to a very low burn rate. It has
mm.
also led to some sacrifices in terms of growth, but I think on the long run it doesn't matter as much, as long as you are building a brand which has got good recall, great customer retention,
Mm.
and high customer loyalty. I think a little sacrificing a little bit of growth for that and ensuring that there's a path to profitability very clearly laid out matters more, and all the more in the current scenario that we are in.
Okay. The way I see it, I think 1 out of 4 customers who try the product end up buying the product, and that says a lot about product market fitment. So you are fit for the market. And now that you are producing 20,000 liters and nine tanks that you mentioned, I think you have reached when you define the startup journey, there is 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and 10 to 100. So I think you are at probably you have crossed that one stage, and probably in between 1 to 10. What is
Yes.
the roadmap forward? How do you uh, see your path for next 5 or 10 years timeline?
So I think we are on the journey of turning into a national brand as of this moment. We For the first 3 years of our 4 years of existence, we did not even venture outside of Maharashtra and Goa,
Hmm.
right? And we were very conscious. Again, we needed that product market fit, like the way you put it, right? There's a journey of one, and then there's a 0 to 1 and 1 to 10. We are still in the journey of 1 to 10, and in that journey, only in the last 6 months have we come and opened 6 new markets. Right? We entered Karnataka, Rajasthan, Himachal, Silvassa, UP, and Assam only recently, literally a 6 month backstory.
Hmm.
So for us, what we plan to do is, for I think the next 1.5 years, markets are going to be tough. Investments are going to be hard to come by. So it's about conserving and utilizing your resources the right way. So for now, it's about consolidation. So that's what we're going to be doing. I think the next leg of expansion will happen next year, where we start to open. There are markets which we haven't touched, which we want to touch, like Hyderabad. There is Chennai. There is Kerala, and then up north there is Delhi. There is Haryana. All massive sized markets that we not even come close to right now.
Hmm.
And most importantly, I think we've also recognizing the fact that we are in a white space.
Hmm.
We are in a white space where, and it's a rarity to find these kind of white spaces in a sector like alcohol. But and so there is an opportunity to go global with this product and with the brand that we've built, or rather building. And that is something that we will, again, like I said, it's all about spacing out your growth. But we will start venturing into export markets this year in a small way. And after the next round of domestic expansions, we might aggressively start chasing the export market as well.
Okay. Um, Speaking of Indian market, I think there is a tendency that in Indian market, some player will disrupt the market like you are doing, and then the next player will seize the opportunity. It happened with Paytm defined the market, and PhonePe or Bharat Pay seizing the opportunity. Flipkart defined the market, and Amazon just took it over. So, what is your strategy for that? You are going big, and of course, your competitors will notice, and they'll come up with competing products. What is your strategy for that?
We want more competition in the market. Let's see again. We are not a digital. We're not a digital or a tech-based company, and therefore we are cognizant that anybody who comes into this organization is going to have to take some time to grow. Right? It's a distribution game here, and we welcome more players in. Like we are not vying for the masses. We are somewhere in the mass and class. We're sort of straddling both worlds, and we're therefore a little more expensive than most brands. So if Dira and Kingfisher Ultra are all priced at, let's say, 130, 140 in a market, we are priced at 200 in that market. So first and foremost, we know we are targeting we are at the slightly more premium scale where we are hoping the consumers start to upgrade. That's the first thing, right? So what we do hope is that more players enter this market, because it's rather lonely being the only player in this market. I would be happier having just 30% of market share in 1,000 crore industry in India than having 100% market share in a 10 crore industry in India, right? And it's since we are building a new category, and this building of new category can only happen through sampling and not through some advertising on television or print. We would be very, very happy to share that burden and cost with other players who come in, because the only hope that we have, and that's where our fingers are crossed, is that whoever comes in to share that cost and burden of educating a consumer does it with a great liquid. Because the risk of having somebody come in and do the same in a larger scale with a bad liquid is that the chances of them migrating to our product is lower, or even sampling or trying our product is lower. So having said that, it's rather heartening to see a lot of new brands coming into the market. It's great to see rather a lot of good brands coming into the market. We have now, from the time we were the only player in the market, we have, I think, 6 players now in the market, and another 4 or 5 are coming in. So it's great. Nice. It's nice to see that, because now there is an opportunity to work together and build a brand new category for meads in India. And I think I'm just hoping for the best actually going forward. I would love to see more players coming in. It's always easier. Everybody makes noise then.
Can you tell us what are the biggest challenges that you have faced during your journey of entrepreneurship?
I think the biggest journey specifically on for the brand that we've seen is, we are in a sector, in a new category, in a new sector, in an industry that does not allow ATL advertising of any sort. And in that kind of a place with relatively limited resources, trying to get the word of mouth out has been arguably the biggest challenge. And we need to all the time come up with innovative ways of introducing our brand to consumers, right? And that has been fundamentally the single biggest effort that we've taken. On a more personal, I think having spent 15 years in corporate, you get 15 years in corporate, you're used to this salary hitting your account, comfort zone, your salary hitting your account. You're also older, so you have a lot more responsibilities. You have kids. I've got 2 kids. So, you have to keep balancing your own aspirations, and also be very pragmatic of the responsibilities you also have. And balancing that out is critical. And I think that comes with family, right? Your wife, your parents, her parents, your friends, all larger group. You have to keep, you have to get their confidence, and you need them to back you up. And I've been fortunate to get a lot of help from them. And that has been the biggest challenge. And that has also been something that I've been able to work around because of the support I have gotten. So, yeah. So there's a problem with the brand, and there's a personal story as well. So
they say the biggest addiction is monthly salary.
The biggest addiction is monthly salary. I can't tell you. The first 3 months when nothing came, and I realized I need to break an FT to keep the liquidity running. It's sort of just changes the way you look at things. You reallocate your investments in such a way that you should be able to pull them out whenever you need them. And I think for the first 1 month, comically, I used to get up like the time I used to leave for my office, wear all my clothes, including my shoe, and then sit on the table and then look at my calendar, which was usually blank, and say, okay, now I've got to create my calendar. There's no secretary, there's nobody sitting and creating. So that shift took
mm,
almost a 6-month period, right? That complete transition. However, now once you make the transition, I don't think you can ever go back to that
yeah.
life. I mean, it's very hard to go back to that life. This flexibility is something that you start to enjoy, and then I think if you ever go back to that life, you will crave to come back to this.
Okay. Speaking of the transition, speaking of the shift, you knew about the hardship, you knew about the entrepreneur's life, but what triggered you to be an entrepreneur? Why not continue in the comfort zone?
I think this is something my wife told me, right? If you're anyway giving 18 hours of effort to an organization, why not give it to yourself? I think that, and of course, a little support and push from her helped.
Mm,
But I think it was a combination of that and the fact that you knew you were getting into business with a friend you know for 35 years. So there was a decent comfort and the excitement of trying to build something new from scratch. And if we do turn successful, it is going to leave a mark for years to come. And that excitement, it's essentially what is that one thing that doesn't let you sleep in the night. And
mm,
when that becomes your own little dream that you're trying to build for yourself,
mm.
I think that's the point when you make the switch.
Okay. You mentioned that in the first few days of entrepreneurship, your calendar used to look empty. I'm curious to know, how does your calendar look like now? What is your daily schedule and all?
Oh, wow, it starts at 8:50 with calendar blocked all the way down to 10:30, and then I have like a 2 hour where I keep it for myself. And
Okay.
then second half again, it starts getting filled with meetings. Thankfully, now we have teams that are. I mean, for the first I think 12 to 18 months, we were just three of us in a company.
Mhm.
We started to hire people only after that. So till the first 3 years, my calendar remained empty because I could call Rohan whenever I want. Invariably, I was sitting in front of him and trying to get stuff done.
Mm,
But nowadays, the calendar is again full. I mean, I barely get like probably 3-4 hours to myself to get stuff done. Otherwise, you're jumping onto meetings one after the other because with new markets, there are new groups who need clarity on an ongoing basis every week. And so you are now again, it's gone back to the corporate days. Only difference is now I fill my calendar up. I've realized if I don't do that, I will be all over the place because there's no direction otherwise. So
mm,
from an absolutely zero calendar, nothing on it, has again gone back to being fully full. So however, I think I make it a point to keep about 4 hours to myself every day,
okay.
and 2 hours in the first half and about 2 hours in the second half,
Mm,
which usually is either spent thinking, writing some ideas that you have, or jumping onto your own personal calls that you want to do with other founders, other people that you want to be networked with,
mm,
because there's a lot of peer learning that happens within the founder community, and it's almost a crime if you don't leverage that learning. So something that I keep on myself. Even on a walk, I schedule some calls for my walk, so that you constantly talking to people, discussing your ideas, because the founder's journey can be quite lonely if you don't do that. And it's important to understand that you're going through the same thing that the other person is, and it helps both when you speak.
mm.
So that's something I consciously keep time every day for that.
How would you define the term entrepreneur? What is the meaning of entrepreneurship for you? Who is an entrepreneur?
Wow, that's so. Entrepreneur is anyone who has this. I might switch to Hindi for this one
Yeah,
word,
yeah,
right? The
sure.
kida to do something new.
Okay.
You don't need to have started something of your own, but if you have that little kida to do something of your own, to do something new, you may be working in an organization for that matter,
Mm,
and you have that tick, right? You've got a strong feeling, strong intuition that something will work, and if that tick keeps you awake through the night
mm,
enough for you to muster the courage to go up to whoever is responsible for your work or on a daily basis, or for that matter your family, and say, I want to do this because I truly believe it's going to add value to people, I think that person who has that tick is an entrepreneur. I mean, you should be willing to give up a lot to make that one thing successful. For me, that would be an entrepreneur.
Okay. My final question, tell us about the lessons that you have learned. So what happens in entrepreneurship, you learn a lot of lessons the hard way. So can you tell us about those lessons which we can take away and apply to our ventures, and more importantly, we don't go through the same hardship that you went through to learn those lessons?
I think one and only one very, very important lesson: build a good, strong team, and build a team that you can completely depend on. Build a team that knows more than you. Don't try,
Mm,
you as an entrepreneur, since you started it, you believe you know the problem better than anybody else. But what you need to also understand is that people who join you are also giving up their rather more comfortable lives to come and get into the grind and get into the mud with you
mm,
and empower them. I mean, there's a line that we tell every new employee who joins us: as long as your ethical backbone is exactly where we want it, and the organization demands it, you guys can do anything. And even if it breaks, don't worry, we'll be able to fix it, right? As long as you're on the ethically, you're on the right path. And that is critical, because at some point in time you have to start giving up certain responsibilities, giving it to your teams, empowering them. Because like I said, right, it's not just because you're a founder, you're an entrepreneur. Everybody who joins you, especially in the first 2-3 years uh, of your sort of journey, startup journey, is an
mm,
entrepreneur by themselves, because they have
right,
come in sacrificing a much more comfortable life for, because they believe in something, that a vision that you sort of told them or sold to them.
right.
So it's very important that you empower that team and trust that team fully. And we've been fortunate to have people who have literally joined us because they felt we were doing something wrong, and they were sure they can do a job better than us, right?
Mm,
And that a sort of mix of confidence that they come in with, and the trust that you got to have in them, and that helps you build this really solid team and ensure that there's a concept of obligation to dissent in your team. I mean, there should be this is something I picked up from my consulting days, that you could be the junior most in the company and you could be speaking to the senior most in the company,
mm,
and you have the right to stand up and say that is not okay, I don't like it for these reasons. And at the end of the day, it's group consensus that always wins most of the
right.
time.
Yeah.
And in those situations, and if after the group consensus something fails, never go back and say, I told you so, I told you this won't work, I told you so. There's no place in our organization for that. And I believe that is something that, again, I bring from my consulting days, because once it's a group consensus, it's everybody's idea. Now everybody has to work doubly hard to ensure that works. And if it doesn't, don't go back to I told you so. Just take a step back, do a postmortem, understand what went wrong, and as a group decide you will not make that mistake again. I think these two things are very, very critical, especially for the first 2-3 years of an organization, because you will make mistakes, you will pivot, you will change the course of what you were doing, you will slow down, you might accelerate. There are tons of good and bad things that happen, and the last thing you want to do is start blaming people for it. I think it's about how quickly can you dust dust yourself off and stand up and start running. And
Yeah.
for that, you need a strong team around you who believes in the same ideals that you do, and you give them the freedom to make changes, make help you make pivots, right? So it's empower the team, create a solid team. I mean, once you have a solid team, everything else starts to fall in place.
Yeah, I think that is one of the key takeaways from the session. Do not say I told you. So,
Don't say I told you so.
on this note, I would close the session. Thanks for your time, and it was an absolute pleasure to host you on this platform.
Thanks. Thanks, Priya Rajan. Thank you.